Imagine yourself communicating with a difference. Pandimensional Solutions helps you do this. Whether live spectator events, taped broadcasts, or real-time audience-engaging programs, you can benefit immediately from the tools Pandimensional Solutions will share with you. Do you want to make a difference? Contact us at pandimensional.com. Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report. Join us each episode as we discuss fantastic topics ranging from history to science to the strange and the wonderful, as well as the treasured spirit with which our region has infused America. We challenge you to consider all things Greater Western New York, from our region's very beginnings to how it inspires, how it empowers, and why it is so admired. Here's the host of the State of Greater Western New York Report, Chris Carosa. Hi, everybody, and welcome again to this week's version of the State of Greater Western New York Report. I'd like to remind you, if you enjoy this and you're watching it live, please enter any questions you have in the chat, and we'll try to forward those to our guests. If you're watching replays and you like what you see, subscribe to us on YouTube and like us on Facebook. With that, let's begin with today's show. Today we're going to be talking about businesses during the past year, how they've been able to cope with the pandemic. And specifically, we're going to start with a couple of guests from the New York State Restaurant Association. With me today is Jimmy Butera, who's the president of the Western New York chapter, and Kevin Dugan, who's the government affairs officer for the organization itself. Jimmy, let's start with you. You're located in Hamburg. You have a restaurant called, surprise, Butera's. Very good restaurant. Actually, I've been there. And Jimmy, tell us a little bit about the role of the New York State Restaurant Associations within the Greater Western New York region, and maybe how they've been helping out restaurants across our region.
Sure, Chris. So we have three Western New York Restaurant Association chapters in the Greater Western New York area. Buffalo, Rochester, and the Southern Tier. And really the main goal for the Restaurant Association has been this past year is, try to get information out. If you remember, the information was just coming so fast and so readily that it was hard for us as operators to really keep track of it. So the association was very instrumental in getting all the information to all of us so we knew what we had to do, when we had to do it, and how to do it, which has been great. For us here at Butera's, I've been, we were on shutdown in March 17th, which was really a blow to the gut for us. We had to reinvent ourselves, as many restaurants across the state had to do. We were grateful that our administration allowed the streets to be open for for curbside, and we jumped right into a curbside program that has been very, very, life-saving for us over the past 11 months. We went from doing a 200 to 300 covers a day in-house to trying to do that in takeout, which, who knows how to do that? Who's ever had experience in that? Certainly not us. And it was a major learning experience for us. Every day for the first 2 weeks, we changed and screwed things to make them, more user friendly for our staff and for our customers.
So, Jimmy, I know that you've been doing a lot. You've actually appeared plenty of times in the media about this. So I want to break it down in a couple of different aspects. First, I want to ask you, how did you work it out so you could get the word out through the media? What sort of tools or networks did you use to do that?
Well, really, I think the thing that clinched that for us was when Governor Cuomo made the announcement on March 16th that the following day restaurants would have no more indoor dining. I had already set up here in the Village of Hamburg with 6 different restaurant owners a meeting to discuss our curbside plan. Then we found out we were shut down an hour before the meeting actually started. So we were able to act quickly. By 5 o'clock that afternoon, we had a press conference where I was front and center of the restaurant community in the village here,
So then the next question is, you were able to discover things virtually as you were doing them. So how did you go about managing that?
That was a roller coaster of a ride. Every shift, every day. So my biggest um, attribute would be the very first Friday we were on takeout only. We did, amazing. We surprisingly, our community came out in droves and droves of people. There was cars lined up both sides of the street, all the way down Main Street here in the Village of Hamburg for both, or not for both, but for all the restaurants in the village. And at one point, I pulled the plug. It's like we're just answering phones and taking orders to take orders. People were getting food an hour and a half after it was sitting here, and it was terrible. Probably the worst performance as a business owner I've ever been a party of. The next day, my management staff, my wife and I, we came up with a game plan with the help with some friends, donating some auto shams so we could keep food warm. The very next day was day and night. We were more organized, better prepared to handle the volume, and every single day from that point on, we looked at the day, figured out what we needed to do to change to make it a better, smoother transition for our customers.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jimmy. Kevin Dugan. Kevin, you're located in Albany and you handle the government affairs for the New York State Restaurant Association. Can you give us a broader sense of maybe what was entailed in terms of working with the government to try to help the restaurants wherever they are in New York State?
Yeah, it's been Jimmy mentioned a roller coaster ride. I think that sort of sums up what it's been like here in Albany, trying to work with the government in terms of getting restaurants open safely, and the entire process through the last year has sort of revolved around these ebbs and flows, I guess I would say. So we've really our emphasis has been like, look, it's safer to eat in a restaurant than it is necessarily to be or it's safer to eat in a restaurant, have these events in restaurants than necessarily it is to have these events at home. The data has sort of proven that restaurants are very safe, and that's what we're trying to emphasize to the government in terms of getting things reopened. Um, but it has been a struggle. Look, our industry has been hit hardest amongst the sort of economic engines across the state of New York. Look, 1 in 6 restaurants, unfortunately, are never going to reopen from this pandemic, and that's just a fact. And we're seeing that number still escalate, even though there is seemingly a light at the end of the proverbial tunnel here, as the vaccination process gets rolled out, and sort of we're seeing some of these regulations get rolled back. But it is a fact that our industry is really still struggling, and we need the government's help to sort of get back on our feet. And that's what our conversation is now sort of turned into. It's been less about relaxing these restrictions because they've started to be rolled back, but it's more about real financial capital to help the industry really get back on its feet.
What I'm wondering is has there been any difference that you've seen in terms of how the restaurants have been able to cope with this, say, Western New York region versus New York City?
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference between those two market sizes to begin with, but also the fact that New York City's density has worked really against it here. I mean, that they've been closed longer than other locations, and they've solely relied on sort of takeout and delivery with outdoor dining. And granted, the weather down there tends to be tempered a little bit longer, so they were able to keep some of those outdoor dining mechanisms in place. Where obviously in upstate New York and especially Western New York, the weather changes a bit faster. What I really have to give it to though is sort of the creativity the restaurants have sort of had been forced into utilizing and adapting to this process, and their ability to make these needed changes. I mean, Jimmy mentioned, how takeout and delivery have become so much more priority for his establishment now, and different ideas that folks have had. I was talking to a restaurateur in Rochester the other day, and she was mentioning the fact that they've found good success with these sort of more like take home meal kits that you've seen pop up in across the country, but like really localized. Here's how you make our homemade pasta dish, and we'll give you all the ingredients to go home and make it, and we'll even write out the instructions for you, and this is how you do it. We've seen a big uptick in sort of terms of alcohol to go, where that's been a lifesaver for some of the restaurants here, and really maybe even expanding that to not just pre-made drinks, but thinking outside the box, like champagne boxes for New Year's Eve, right? We had folks that did like a party in a box where not only did you get champagne, but they gave you some decorations, a meal, but also you were able to sort of log into a private sort of DJ party where at least you had some sort of at-home entertainment on New Year's Eve when many of establishments were closed and not open to have the usual parties and fanfare. So I really want to applaud the ingenuity, I guess, of the restaurateurs across the state of New York and how they've adapted to the situation. But it hasn't been, while that's true, we're still a struggling industry. And again, we still need some help to get back on our feet.
I'm going to ask you both a question now. Kevin, you brought this up and made me think of it. In terms of the future, there's on one aspect we're trying to maybe get back to the way things were, but in another sense, things may have been changed permanently in terms of how the service is provided. Jimmy, start with you. Can you tell us a little bit more, and then Kevin, why don't you feel free to talk with Jimmy on this one?
Yeah.
I think going forward, all the restaurants are going to have a higher volume of takeout than they had in the past. Um, we're virtually, we have no paper menus. Everything's doing QR codes to do electronic menus and everything. I think those are things that are going to be around for a long time to come. If you go back to paper menus, the fear of spreading germs is there. So for us at Butera's, and I know there's a lot of restaurants feel the same way. Less contact with less things is safer for our customers. And at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do: just make our environment a lot safer for our customers, so they can feel comfortable when they come in.
Yeah, Jimmy, I think you're spot on there. I think, takeout and delivery is now just going to be a sort of a tenet of the industry as a whole. I think folks have realized that not only do they like sort of eating at home, they obviously miss the restaurant experience, but there are nights where you want to have a really good meal at home, and you can get that really good meal now. Before it was very
Yeah.
much just, it's pizza or maybe, Chinese or other sort of your standard takeout fare. That's really evolved during this pandemic, and to include, really sophisticated meals that folks can get at home. And also, you mentioned too, the technology as a whole, I think, is going to be taking on a more role going forward here. You mentioned the QR codes for menus, again, all the things that sort of limit, interactions, or at least, physical interactions between staff and customers, I think is going to be sort of the way of the future here. And I would expect those things to sort of continue, as well as, some of the ideas folks have come up with, specials for Mother's Day. Instead of, breakfast, going out to breakfast, maybe you'll have a kit that you can sell and different things like that to have at home Mother's Day. I think those sorts of ideas are going to be sort of here to stay. And I don't think they're going to go away even when things, quote unquote, get back to normal.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
I was going to say it's definitely going to add to our bottom lines. In a place like mine, I'm allowed X amount of customers throughout an entire day. This takeout Brothers Day at home thing that just increases the volume that we're allowed to do. It's I think it's going to be a big change, and it's also going to be a positive change for all of us.
We have time for one quick question from the audience. I was laughing because I read it. All right. In the past year, what's been the most popular food for people to buy from restaurants?
Oh,
Beer.
Jimmy, yeah. I was going to say alcohol is probably the number one thing. Now that restaurants can do alcohol to go, that's been a big boon to the industry, at least to make up some of the dollars that they've lost. I mean, Jimmy, you guys have done well in that area too, I believe.
Yeah, it's interesting. The pandemic started, and I was awarded my brewer's license, so I have to start brewing beer in the middle of a pandemic where I can't even have people come in, but we could sell our beer to go. So I would say the best selling item, and my menu is all catered to travel well. But the best-selling item has definitely been our burgers. I think people are really burger hungry right now in the country, and that's one of our staples and one of our most popular hot selling items.
Hamburgers?
Burgers and
Hamburgers?
beer.
Maybe that'll be a subject of a future show. Well, Jimmy and Kevin, thank you very much for being on this week's State of Greater Western New York report. We will definitely have you back soon, maybe when things get back to normal. All right, we're going to take a break now, and after that we'll have Seth Greene, entrepreneur, telling us about how small businesses in general have been pivoting during this pandemic year. See you in a second. Through the mists of time, nature and man have both created and buried treasures beyond the imagination. With the ages, these riches slowly dissolve into mere myths until they are forever forgotten. But there are those brave souls who tirelessly cling to the truth, ever seeking to discover the undiscovered, to reveal what has always been there, to uncover the hidden gems of a land thought forsaken but loved by millions. 50 Hidden Gems of Greater Western New York. Discover the secrets in your own backyard. Buy your copy now at 50hiddengems.com. Good morning, Seth, or good afternoon, sorry. Forget what time zone I'm in sometimes. So Seth Greene is an entrepreneur. He works at a place that really caters towards the marketing initiatives of small businesses in general, and sometimes maybe not so small businesses. Before we begin, just can you tell us, Seth, a little bit about what you do, so give people a sense for where you're coming from on this?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. So I'm the founder of MarketDominationLLC.com. We grow your business so that you can run it. See, the number one biggest challenge any business has is getting more customers. And if we can solve that problem, then they can focus on how they run their business while we work on the marketing side. So I've had the good fortune to be the co-host of the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank. We've been ranked as high as the number 6 rated podcast to listen to. I've written 8 best-selling marketing books, and I've been nominated for a very prestigious Market of the Year award 3 times in a row. And I'm super excited to be here talking about how small businesses have been pivoting in Western New York and around the world.
So Seth, why don't we just get right down to it and give us a couple of examples that might be applicable, not necessarily within the Greater Western New York region, but to the small businesses that reside within our region. What are some of the experiences that you've had?
Sure. And I'll give you Western New York examples. So if you look at a place like Chicken Pizza Works, which started out as a dine-in restaurant, now they have drop-off catering. And the numbers that you need, normally they would do drop-off catering for large size events. Well, obviously you can't gather in large numbers right now, thanks to the pandemic. So they've lowered that number in terms of, hey, maybe we can get a couple families together that have been distancing together, and we can do drop-off catering for them. What if we convert wait staff to delivery drivers? What if our margins support something like Grubhub or DoorDash or Uber Eats? Can we operate in a dine-in limited capacity? Could we do a special occasion where, let's take those 10, 12, 15, 20 people who have only seen each other and allow them to rent the entire restaurant for the night, and that way they can come in and have a dine-in experience? Could we offer a premium version for Valentine's Day where you could rent out the restaurant for an hour or two for your special someone? So I think on the restaurant side, that's probably been the most common changes is delivery, takeout, take-home meal kits, take-home party packages, so that you can create that experience as much as possible in your own home. Now, if we take a look at, let's say, a professional practice like divorcehelpforwomen.com, we've had the opportunity where prior to the pandemic, they might help women who are contemplating divorce learn about the process in a confidential seminar in-person setting. Well, they've obviously can't really do that right now. So they've pivoted to offering online webinars and online training programs. So now it's opened it up beyond Western New York to now where, even though they're a Williamsville business, they can now help women going through or thinking about divorce or separation literally all over the country from the comforts of their own home.
You remind me, I was talking with a small business owner pretty much in April, say, a while ago, right when this thing was peaking, and they service lawn equipment, lawn tractors, and they really couldn't do that during the time when everything was shut down. So what they did is they offered online training programs. They weren't they weren't like classes that you go and sign up for. They were basically YouTube videos. But what other sort of maybe content, internet-based content generation have businesses done to sort of keep their name out there, maybe even continue to provide the service?
Absolutely. We've seen a huge uptick in podcast activity. Podcasts have exploded in the last year and a half in terms of how many people are consuming them. There's literally over 1.9 billion shows now. So we've seen a lot of our clients, a lot of business owners, a lot of professional practices launch shows to provide weekly audio content, weekly video content, blogs, social media content, so that they're staying in front of their prospects, customers, and audience, and then use that podcast as a platform to disseminate valuable information to the end consumer to help them improve their life when they perhaps can't do it in person, but at least now they can pass that information on in a different type of format in lots of different forms of media, all designed to help that consumer get a result that they're looking for in a different way than they might have been able to do if that person was coming in for an in-person office visit, for example.
What other kinds of business opportunities have sprung up? I mean, I think that there was a article in perhaps Forbes or something about the coronapreneur. People who have started businesses really in response to the pandemic to provide a need for people. Maybe they pivoted, going from manufacturing one thing to say manufacturing masks, things like that. What sort of evidence or experience do you have with that?
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. If you look, the gig economy has exploded in the last year and a half because as a lot of us have been forced to work from home or work remotely, we're realizing we can work remotely. So does that mean that we can do other things remotely? Can we freelance on a site like Upwork or Fiverr and get additional revenue streams coming into our bottom line? Can we consult? If what we thought was a 40-hour-a-week job in an office now doesn't take us 40 hours because we're doing it remotely, now does that open up time to do other things, whether it's for fun or for profit? So I think the opportunity, whether it's switching what you manufacture to be pandemic supported, or if it's pandemic related, that now you realize we had an example where there was a local business that provided educational classes in a physical setting for, let's say, preschool or elementary school age kids. Well, Alexandra Baldi, the founder of that, realized, hey, if I can't have physical classes in person, if they have to be on Zoom anyway, and maybe I supply the kits that go with the class and ship ahead of time, maybe now because of Zoom, I can now offer this class nationwide and grow my business to a level I never thought before.
I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Jimmy and Kevin, and that is to look to the future. What sort of changes may have become permanent as a result of this past year? And for example, I'm thinking a large bank in New York City is cutting down its office space footprint because they've discovered that their employees can work more effectively and efficiently from home. For smaller businesses, that might not be the same thing, but what sort of permanent changes do you expect to see?
I think we're going to have, restaurant delivery, takeout, take-home meal kits, experiential things that can happen from the comfort of your living room are going to be a lot more popular. I don't think that'll ever change back. I think that a lot more businesses will be virtual. You mentioned, the commercial real estate sector is probably going to get hit because a lot of businesses, when those leases are up, if everyone's going to been working remotely and doing just fine, do they really need the office space? I think also a lot more businesses could have the opportunity to grow because they thought they were fixed in a local market serving a small population in their local area. And now they realize through the magic of the internet, social media, and Zoom, they can serve customers across the country or even the globe, and thus therefore grow their business virtually much bigger than they ever could have thought possible if they were limited to a physical bricks and mortar location serving people in person.
Absolutely. Great points. Is there any closing thought that you'd like to leave off with our small business audience?
Absolutely. Obviously, we'd love for you to check out the Sharkpreneur podcast, which is on iTunes, Google Play, and pretty much every other platform on social media. And of course, if you're interested in how we can help you grow your business, check us out at marketdominationllc.com.
All right. Thank you very much, Seth. And thank you, everyone, for being a part and participating in this week's version of the State of Greater Western New York Report. Again, if you like this show and you're watching it in replay mode, which could be either on YouTube or Facebook, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or like the Facebook comments or like the Facebook or YouTube or whatever it is that you have to do these sorts of things. I don't know. I'm just the guy behind the desk. So thank you again. I'm Chris Carosa for the State of Greater Western New York Report. We'll see you next week.